Hello, YouTube. It's another Friday, so it's also another coloring pixels and sharing my thoughts and observations from the past week. I got this new advent calendar for this holiday thing, so let's open the first one and get into my thoughts. Oh, it's a snowflake. Cute. So, to circle back to the first ever episode of these things, which I hope people are enjoying them, and if not, well, I guess we'll find out. Plagiarism stuff going on YouTube had an update this week, of which James Somerton made an apology video and then deleted it, which is true fashion because he always does that. In fact, that was part of the whole investigation by H. Bomber guy, that this guy just like does stuff and then deletes it once people discover problems with it. And I didn't watch the video because I just didn't feel like devoting the time to the apology, but people were posting snippets on Twitter and it was a non-apology, which got me to thinking about apologies and why everybody is so bad at doing them. So, as a person with extreme guilt in cases of wrongdoing, I pride myself on how well I've learned to apologize. Even though I'm kind of a perfectionist in the sense that I try not to be in a situation where I need to apologize, but like you're just never going to be perfect despite all of my best attempts at doing so. And so, you have to know how to apologize. I think the first important rule of apologizing for something is you have to say the words, "I apologize" and or "I am sorry." I feel like if you don't say those words, it is already a non-apology. And I feel like a lot of people think that an apology just involves some sort of an explanation of what happened. But in reality, you have to say sorry. You have to say, "I'm sorry, I apologize, my bad," whatever it is. You have to say those words, because if people do not hear those words, then it will come off as you not really apologizing, but sort of making excuses. And that gets me to the second thing I think that's wrong with most people's apologies, is that they often do make excuses in their apologies. They just sort of explain why they did or said XYZ and then assume that that explanation implies enough, apology, but it doesn't. You have to have at first the words, "I'm sorry, I apologize." Then you're allowed to make an explanation for your behavior or, what you said or, what you did, but you can't make excuses. And to avoid making excuses, I think, is to admit where you might have been wrong, aka explore and state or even repeat what the person has said to you that hurt their feelings or was wrong. You start out an apology with an "I'm sorry, I apologize." Then you go, "You indicated to me that XYZ hurt your feelings, made you feel bad, wronged you in this exact specific way, and I'm sorry that I did that." And you have to avoid the "I'm sorry you feel that way" situation. Though I will say that a lot of socially deviant people, that's the word I'll use in this case, socially deviant, aka that dark triad sort of narcissism, sociopathy, like cluster of personalities. Those people do want you to apologize for wrongdoings that didn't happen, but this is a situation, or rather the example that I'm talking about is, let's say you did screw up. You should say, "I'm sorry, I apologize, and then you should say, these are the things that I messed up or did wrong, and here is how I am going to remedy that situation in the future. And I think those three elements make a good apology. Um, Without those three elements, you really run into situations where people will not feel like you're actually sorry about what you did. And I think that's what happened with James Somerton. Though in a way, stealing people's money, I don't know that enough and this goes to the flip side of things, which is forgiveness, right? Like, it's not up to me or third parties to decide whether or not an apology is worth forgiveness, right? Because, forgiveness is a very messy, complex situation, in my opinion. Like, I think a lot of sort of overly religious or self-righteous people might believe that forgiveness is necessary for healing, but in my mind, I think actually there are situations where you can decide you don't forgive a person, and it doesn't have to weigh on you like some sort of lifelong pain or baggage to carry with you. Sometimes it really is fine to just say, I don't forgive that person. I don't think that they have taken any steps to remedy the situation. They did not apologize. They did not see the error of their ways. They are still trying to sort of get away with things. And so I don't forgive them, and I am going to remove them from my life. And I think in my experience of being someone who's like been in therapy and also studied psychology, I think there is this idea that forgiveness is a necessary healing element, but I don't agree. I think that forgiveness is actually a situation where you and the other party have decided together that whatever happened between you was messed up, but you are actively working to heal from that situation because they apologized and made amends and changed the behavior. I feel like forgiveness is a two-way thing. I feel like you can't forgive someone if they don't apologize and make amends. I feel like if you tell yourself, "Oh, I forgive them for," and they're just like still kind of garbage, I just feel like at that point you're at risk of ignoring your own feelings and suppressing important reactions. Because when someone harms you, I think it is important to acknowledge that they harmed you and that it was messed up, and that blame should fall on them, and that it's okay to not forgive them because they never change. Like, that to me, I think forgiveness is, again, a two-way street. I don't think that it can happen in a vacuum of one person deciding to forgive another person and the other person is just like, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I did. Speaking of forgiveness and two-way streets, recently I've been having some sort of conversations in my friend group about toxic friendships and toxic friend groups. And I'm old now, or at least old according to the kids. I turned 33 this year. And my opinion about toxic friendships and just peer groups in general is that it is extremely difficult for a group of people to grow together. More often than not, there will be people who can't or won't grow as they age. Like, there are plenty of adults who are extremely immature until they die. And, like one of my old film professors said, If you choose not to change, your life then becomes about not changing, about the refusal, about how you're constantly faced with these situations where it would have been a good idea for you to change and adapt your behavior, but you just said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fight and go against the grain so that I can maintain my sense of comfort. Because that's the other thing, too, about growing and maturing, right? It is extremely uncomfortable. It never feels good to reminisce on mistakes you may have made, people you may have harmed, and to acknowledge that and decide, I'm going to be different now. I'm not going to do that anymore in response to whatever external situations occurred. And in discussion upon these like toxic friend groups and people's refusal to grow, there's also that refusal to apologize, which makes it hard to move on, and that refusal to just acknowledge that things have changed as well and that people change. I know that in at least in my, I guess, short but also kind of long, like time is weird when you're in your 30s because you kind of get in that space where you're like, damn, I've lived a long time and I have a long memory of time, but also there's still so much time left. It's the never-ending paradox in a way of being between 30 and 50. But to go back to my train of thought there, I think that when people get, in the same way that people refuse to change, I think a lot of people also can refuse to acknowledge that change has happened. You get people making assumptions about people based on a shared history, even though their perception of that shared history might be completely different in the future. For example, I might remember that when I was in high school and in middle school that a lot of people didn't like me and a lot of people were mean to me and I was bullied. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people who think, no, I liked her a lot. I thought she was fun. I thought we were friends. And then there becomes that sort of like, disagreements over what is true of the past and what changes have occurred. And I think the greatest example I have for this in a positive note is that I had a friend reach out to me as a part of her 12-step program, explaining how our friendship in high school was severely degraded, partially because of her lack of sobriety. And so this step was important for her to come to me and say, hey, I know that I blamed you for the demise of our friendship when it happened, but now I'm taking responsibility for those things I didn't want to admit were true about myself at that time, and I'm sorry. And it was a very good apology, but also I think we both kind of came to a larger conclusion about a third party that had kind of caused the rift between us. And we both grew, whereas he did not. His sort of thing became, I refuse to grow up, and I resent the world for treating me this way. And my personality is now a personality of resentment, specifically towards you two women. You can guess what the story is there, but it is nice when you can rekindle broken relationships in a positive manner because both of you have grown and time has passed and you have both recognized the past behaviors on both sides and have both accepted responsibility for any negative behaviors, and now you are different, you're growing, you're changing, and you're accepting those changes no matter how difficult they might be. I think I'll wrap it up there and just end by saying I hope you guys have a lovely holiday season. And, you know, family is tough. I could be the first person to say that, like, I don't forgive certain family members, and I don't care about that. They don't deserve said forgiveness. But if you can reconcile and you can approach each other and you can both recognize bad things you've done and you can say sorry for those things, you can grow and change together. And I think that's quite beautiful. Happy holidays, and I'll see you guys in the next one.